the next question. So, what has your experience been as a minority at Crossroads, personally?
Well, as a woman and as a woman of color, I have always felt very welcome and embraced in this community. I have always felt that this is a place that, from an adult perspective, when we're looking at staffing issues or personnel issues, is a place that stays very conscious of wanting to have different kinds of faces present and represented. However, I believe that we occasionally suffer from a universalistic mentality, meaning that as a Latina woman who grew up in a certain way, I have a certain set of cultural norms that govern how I behave in the workplace, that govern, or at least influence, maybe not govern, but influence lots of different things. So what may work for Nia, who's an African American woman, how she sees her world is likely going to be in some ways different from how I, as a Mexican American woman, see my world. And I think it's very important that we acknowledge that and are aware of that and make sure that we're not instituting things that are one size fits all. There's a balance between being inclusive, but also to the point where you're not able to acknowledge that and be comfortable with the idea that different cultures do operate according to different norms, and that's okay. My personal experience has been very positive, but I would like to see some more specifics, more outreach, more programming in place for students and grown-ups on this campus that really embraces this notion that cultures are different and should be celebrated for their differences, and that a one-size-fits-all model may not work. For example, from a student perspective, I love council. I happen to think the style of council is incredibly valuable and rich for many students, but I also know from my own cultural experience, if you were to put my grandmother in a council circle, that would feel very foreign to her and very uncomfortable. And I think we need to be conscious of that that's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just a thing, in part informed by our historical backgrounds, our cultural backgrounds. And, we need to acknowledge that. I'm lucky that I work in a place that really celebrates hiring and recruiting different kinds of people from different backgrounds and has an eye on that, but also doesn't sort of sacrifice professionalism and expertise. And I have worked in environments where I have been harassed because I was a woman and was one of the few women administrators at my previous school. And, I feel very accepted here. I feel like, very conscious. However, I do think we need to not be stuck in a self-confirmation bias loop, that there are pockets of this community that may feel more marginalized than we believe. And I think we can sometimes get a little stuck in this, but we're Crossroads, and we have a school philosophy that's very inclusive, that celebrates diversity, and we have all of these programs in place, and all of that's true, and we do a pretty good job, I think. But that doesn't mean there aren't people or pockets of people in this community that feel that this place maybe doesn't get them. I don't know. I have kind of strong opinions about this, I'm not gonna lie.
That's fine. I want you to be as,
I'm probably gonna get in trouble.
ballsy as possible.
You're gonna edit some of this, I assume?
Yes.
Okay, good.
They don't want my voice in this. All right, next question is, does diversity play a role in your life outside of Crossroads?
Does diversity play a role outside of Crossroads?
In your life.
In my life?
Yes.
Well, I suppose the answer to that question totally depends on what diversity means. And what diversity means, I think, looks very different for different people. I guess for me, if by diversity you mean a pluralistic, heterogeneous set of qualities and characteristics that may or may not align along religious preferences or cultural preferences or a sexual orientation, just a sort of a general, not tolerance, because I think tolerance is sort of like the bare minimum, but real celebration and acceptance of different viewpoints, different ideas, divergent thinking, all of which could be informed by the fact that someone's a Muslim or someone's African American or someone's, gay or someone is transgendered, whatever. Then I love that. I absolutely become a better person by hanging out with people who think totally different than me. I think you become a more conscious global citizen when you actively seek out people and experiences and groups that are different than you, different than yours. At the same time, a lot of my identity is rooted in the traditions of my own culture and celebrating that and learning how to kind of meld all of that. So if you were like to, I always sort of joked in college, this is maybe not so politically correct, like my friend group looks like a Benetton commercial. It's like very diverse visually, but in some ways more importantly, I think the experiential differerences are really significant. And so it's definitely something I'm conscious of. I care on a sort of socio-political level. I care very much about underrepresented groups having voice, and actively seek to either work with those types of groups in a professional capacity or to advocate for those groups in volunteer work or through the political process, or so those are things that I am very, I went to graduate school for counseling and therapy, and I'm very conscious of the other. I'm very conscious of groups that feel marginalized and perhaps have not, who don't have a place of privilege in our society, and plus for me personally, it's just more fun. It's more fun. I don't want to be surrounded by people who are exactly like me and think like me and look like me, and I can hang out with myself all day. In fact, I do hang out with myself all day. But I'd rather have lots of divergent thinking around me, and people who disagree with me and people who think differently than me, because it just helps inform me. I learn more about the world and about myself that way.
All right. Do you have any personal anecdotes that made you kind of think about diversity on campus in a different way that you'd like to share? If not, that's okay.
Well, I gotta think about that one. I'm sure I do. Yeah, I can't maybe find... as a dean, I am often in very difficult conversations with students who are in crisis. And I have, we have a really kind of thoughtful, therapeutic approach to working with students or families who are in some type of deep yogurt, who are really struggling with something, whether that be a substance issue or a mental health issue or an academic issue. I took many multicultural counseling classes in school, and through my own experiences, I recognize that the type of intervention you employ could be altered and informed by that student's cultural background, socioeconomic background, gender, thinking. And one size does not fit all. So for some students, going to a therapist on a weekly basis makes perfect sense. And that could really be the therapeutic intervention that helps them overcome that issue that they're struggling with. But for other students, for whatever reason, for a variety of reasons, that could be really threatening, very uncomfortable, not part of their cultural lexicon, and instead for them, their pastor at church serves more of that role. So I think when I work with families, you know, I try, sometimes I think on the west side of Los Angeles, this is a bubble. I'm sorry, this is a homogeneous part of Los Angeles for the most part. The like mean income in Santa Monica is pretty high. And though there is a diverse sort of cultural, you know, yes, this is definitely a left of center kind of town, and I think we're certainly more culturally diverse than parts of middle America. I do think at a school like Crossroads, where a lot of families are, well, let me take a step back. I do think that here we can sometimes get stuck in recommending the same type of thing for all kids. And I've had some experiences with families where I know that that sort of traditional intervention of therapy, which I do believe can be helpful for lots of different people, won't work. Or for example, I have an underrepresented student, you know, a male underrepresented student probably needs to see a therapist who's perhaps not Caucasian and female. You know, those kinds of things, we need to be really conscious of all of that layered detail, and really avoid kind of a one-size-fits-all model where, oh, but we celebrate, yes, it's okay, like celebrate differences and celebrate diversity, but